Good afternoon. Good afternoon. May 26th, this is a Lower Richland Tourism Plan work session. Madam Clerk, can we call the meeting to order?
Malinowski, Pugh, McBride, Livingston.
Here.
Horatio, Joe Walker, Barron, O'Walker, Mackey.
Here.
English, Newton.
Present. Thank you. Just to note that Chair Overture Walker had another engagement, so he could not be here this evening. And so running the meeting in his place. The next item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Second.
Livingston.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Newton. Motion approved.
All right, the next item is a presentation. I'd like to recognize ACA, sorry, Jensen. Oh, I didn't see him. I was looking for him. Where did he go? ACA Jensen, if you would come forward, please.
Thank you, Ms. Mackey and members of the council. Yes, I was not in my usual corner, was I?
No.
I had you fooled there. It's very, it's exciting to be here. Some people may say this doesn't sound like a very exciting topic, but in the world of planning nerds, this is an exciting thing. And that is my background. And so the Lower Richland Tourism Plan is a document that was authorized by the Richland County Conservation Commission back in 2017. They hired a consultant, and the consultant brought forth this document after rigorous public involvement and study. And I wanted to take just 2 seconds before I turn it over to the commission chairman who's with us today, just to talk to you about my personal experience with this particular type of planning exercise. And as many of you know, I spent much of my life in the Intermountain West area of the country. I typically lived within an hour or a day's drive of 12 to 13 national parks. Lower Richland happens to have one of the only national parks in our region. And it's an asset that, in my opinion, is very underutilized. I did a little exercise this afternoon, and I estimate that in my lifetime, I have visited, sometimes repeatedly, somewhere between 50 and 100 national parks, or made visits to more than 50 to 100 national parks. And I estimated that our family would spend anywhere from $1,000, maybe a little more, at every single visit that we would make. And so that means that my family alone has spent somewhere north of $50,000 visiting national parks in my lifetime. You're going to hear some numbers today. They're going to be bandied about, talking about how much is estimated is being spent in our county or in the region of folks who visit Congaree National Park. It's a number that is somewhat surprising, but at the same time not. What is surprising or distressing, in my opinion, is the amount of capture that Richland County is experiencing, how much money that is being expended in the area that Richland County is capturing. And so that's, again, part of what today's discussion is going to be about, is how does the county and its citizens and its business owners in particular take advantage of this asset here in our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Grego, the chair of the commission. And Madam Chair, may I address Ms. Newton?
Yes.
Thank you. And I don't want to break up the flow of the
Yes, ma'am.
presentation. I just want to put out there, I know that you and I had a conversation based on calls that I'd made to the council members to ask about what some of their questions were in terms of what the ask was of this body, cost implications, et cetera. Are those going to be addressed at the end of the presentation?
They will be addressed during the presentation. I
Okay.
have, Ms. Noon, I have forwarded all of your requests and comments to Mr. Grego, and it is going to be part of his presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grego?
Okay, thank you. I'm John Grego, the chair of the Richland County Conservation Commission. We do have a couple other commissioners here, Wayman Stover and Tim McSwain, and then let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, and Daryl Jackson Jr. is here, and also we have John McKenzie, who is our recently newly hired conservation program manager. Okay. Let's see, could you switch to the first slide? Oh dear, those aren't the slides.
Did you provide the slides to someone, Mr. Grego?
Yes, we did.
Okay, is there a slideshow? This is the PDF document. I think he's saying that he has a PowerPoint that was provided today.
And it was also, well, it was a PowerPoint also provided as a PDF.
This appears to be the actual plan itself, not the slides.
Right, that's the entire plan, not the
Correct.
slideshow. Okay,
There we go.
Okay, there we go.
All right.
Okay, could you go to the next slide? Let's see, Eric's talked about the timeline some already. We engaged Esker Robinson in 2016. We had almost 200 citizens of Lower Richland who participated in public input and stakeholder sessions. There was a final draft in 2018, approved a month later by the Richland County Conservation Commission, and we made a motion to council in February 2019 to approve the plan. There were some intervening events and the plan didn't progress, but due to some strong interest by a couple other county divisions and the work of ACA Jensen, we picked up the project again with a new path to approval. And so in December of 2021, we were asked to, we made a presentation to the Development Services Committee with a request for approval. And in February 2022, we held a drop-in. Okay, next slide. Okay. Part of the impetus for the plan was the nature of the visitation that we see in Congaree National Park. In both 2017 and 2019, Congaree National Park had almost 160,000 visitors, not over, but almost. And in 2019, a study showed that $9.6 million were spent by visitors to the park within a 60-mile radius. And of course, there'd be very few opportunities for that to be spent in the Lower Richland community. And so we wanted to create a framework to keep visitors in the area and to keep visitors in the area longer, with an emphasis on camping, dining, lodging, et cetera. And of course, a goal here is to produce income for Lower Richland and for Lower Richland residents, basically so that they could benefit from our natural and cultural resources. I'll note since that report came out that in 2021, the park had 215,000 visitors, which is almost a 35% increase from these numbers here. So you could scale all that up by a third. And we're doing even better in 2022 so far. Next slide. Okay, yeah. And this is just a reference to the national picture. Depending on which source you use, this is the USGS. I see even higher figures reported by the National Park Service. And but suffice it to say that there are over 200 to 300 million visits to the 400 national park units across the country, tens of billions of dollars of economic impact, and over 300,000 jobs supported by our nation's national parks. And many of them are in gateway communities. Okay, Lower Richland does have a couple natural gateway communities, and there are some, as you go from national park to national park, there are many gateway communities that have been outstanding successes. You know, just think nearby of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You have Cherokee, North Carolina, and Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, for instance, or Moab, Utah, in front of Arches National Park. We put up this slide here just to show the opportunities of being closely associated with a national park. When people visit one national park, they visit others. And so there's an opportunity to capture them. Next slide. Okay, yeah. And so the themes for the plan are that Lower Richland needs to develop tourism infrastructure, that its residents need to benefit from that development. And the plan should focus on not just nature tourism, but heritage tourism and small business development. Next slide. Okay, this is an overall schema. I won't point out all the details, but the plan identifies places that can serve as gateways just along the periphery of Lower Richland. There are major hubs, including a Mill Creek Nature Center on the Mill Creek property, and then a small business incubator and a heritage center near Hopkins. Minor hubs, such as the towns of Eastover and Gadsden, the Cabin Branch property, and many points of interest, not just including Congaree National Park and Watery Heritage Preserve, but also all the historic houses, churches, and schools. You know, other elements of the plan include corridors, including the road network, Palmetto Trail, the Congaree and Watery Blue Trails, and possibly a rail trail, branding and wayfinding, and a regulatory framework that focuses on rural zoning categories that promote tourism. We've already made a lot of progress on that. Next slide, please. Okay, now we're going to have single slides on nature tourism and heritage tourism, and then 3 slides on small business development. The recommendations for nature tourism were to have a major hub at Mill Creek Nature Center, some minor nature tourism hubs, including Gadsden as a possible gateway community, interpretive courses for guides and outfitters so that residents could get training, develop interpretive trails linking nature and heritage sites, and Blue Trail access at Mill Creek and Watery Heritage Preserve. I'll note that the Congaree and Watery Blue Trails, they're 50 miles long and 90 miles long respectively. And with the Watery Blue Trail, once you get below Camden, there's no public access until its junction with the Congaree River. Likewise with Congaree River, once you get below Columbia, Thomas Newman Boat Landing and Barney Jordan Boat Landing, there's no public access until the 601 Boat Landing. Okay, next slide. Okay, this just shows the Mill Creek Nature Center, and it includes tent platforms and elevated cabins at both Goose Creek and along Congaree River itself, sort of on the left of the property. It includes a possible RV site in the center of the property, a place for an outfitter at the entrance marked in red along Old Bluff Road, and then two different ramps at the northwest end of the property and the southeast end of the property for paddling take-ins and takeouts. Next slide. Okay, and this just shows part of the Cabin Branch property. The emphasis there is going to be on passive recreation, where we have greenway loop, and nature trail. Okay. For heritage tourism, the plan recommended including Lower Richland in a South Carolina National Heritage Corridor to leverage existing resources like DNR's Kawasi Basin Tour Guide and the Lower Richland Heritage Corridor Visitors Guide produced by Serco to improve interpretive trails, help existing nonprofits with development, develop a wayfinding and branding system, help with improvements to the Palmetto Trail, and have a heritage center tentatively proposed at Hopkins Green. There wasn't certainty that the heritage center could stand alone, so we thought about combining it with a library branch. It could include a band shell and also linked into the small business incubator. The plan proposes helping the city of Eastover with historic building rehabilitation and adaptive reuse. We've already done that with our grant programs to some extent. And Lower Richland has had several oral history projects, but there's always more stories to collect. Next photo. Yeah. Okay. And this shows the Hopkins Village Green includes of interest here a heritage center and a bean shell at the bottom of the triangle. There are a couple elements related to the small business development as well. Next slide. Okay, the 3 areas of small business development that the plan focused on were lodging and accommodations, food service and production, and agriculture and food production. With lodging and common to all three programs is providing education programs and financing options for local residents. In terms of small business economic development, they focused on a shared economy training program, perhaps starting with renting a room in your house for Airbnbs, and then a shared economy small loan program where perhaps you build a mother-in-law unit or something like that as separate lodging for Airbnb or Vrbo. There'd be recreation vehicle and lodging options at Mill Creek. And let's go on to the next slide. So, under food service and production, they proposed a commercial kitchen at the small business incubator, food trucks and catering and restaurant facilities at hubs. The idea with the commercial kitchen and the food trucks, it's for people who wanted to start small in terms of food service and production, and then they could build up to perhaps a permanent restaurant. We also proposed adapting zoning to facilitate restaurant development, and that's been done to some extent with rural crossroads zoning, basically by not focusing on a rural crossroads being a major crossroads, and also under the categories of permitted uses. Next slide. Okay, yeah, this just shows the Cabin Branch property again. And if you look at that property off to the left, where the magistrate's office is currently located, in the original plan, that was proposed as the site of a possible farm-to-table restaurant. Okay, if we could, next slide. And then the last slide on agriculture and food production. The focus here is on specialty farming. The plan envisioned a farm-to-table branding campaign, a farmer's market, education and training programs for specialty farming, and perhaps a farmer's co-op with a refrigeration hub. Ideas that have obviously, or that have been tried out in Charleston with great success. Next slide. And this is just revisiting Hopkins Green. You could see a couple of the elements there include the commercial kitchen on the upper right, and on the upper left is the stalls for a farmer's market. Okay, next slide. Okay, the last part of the plan includes information about funding and phasing of each of the proposed projects, and also list resources and partners for all the major tourism, small business development projects, just lays them out in big spreadsheets. And in the plan itself, it estimated the build out cost is $17 to $24 million. And Quentin had put together a capital improvement project request stretched over 10 years because that was the time frame, but a more realistic build out might be 20 years. Next slide. Okay, we included a 5-year plan looking forward, and it's stretched over 2 slides. This includes years 1, 2, and 3. And the main focal points here are the improving the infrastructure at Mill Creek. We have already paid for a bridge redesign, and we'll be working toward bridge replacement with Conservation Commission funds. We already had a heritage tourism marketing plan under based on some hospitality tax funds we got a couple years ago, and that fits in. The goals of the heritage tourism marketing plan fit in well with the goals of the Lower Richland tourism plan in terms of branding and wayfinding. But the other main features of this initial 2 or 3 years would be small business incubator or small business development, and then working on the infrastructure for the Mill Creek property. We also would develop master plans for the Mill Creek and Cabin Branch properties to get more realistic cost estimates for some of the projects we're proposing. Next slide. Okay. The latter part of the 5-year plan would again focus on the small business incubator, implementing the Cabin Branch master plan. Remember, that's a low impact infrastructure, mostly just roads and trails, and then implementing some of the larger projects in the Mill Creek plan, the cabins, a fishing pier, and RV camping with an office. Okay. I'll note that these projects are all subject to change based on the availability of funding. These are all estimated cost, and actual cost won't be determined until after master plans are complete and we undergo procurement. Next slide. Okay. As I said, we haven't been sitting still since 2019. We've completed bridge improvement design work. Palmetto Trail has seen a couple improvements with other improvements proposed. The Land Development Code includes provisions for rural crossroads that will help with the tourist economy. Hopkins Magistrate Office has been built at that site where the Farm to Table restaurant was proposed. At Pinewood Lake Park, we have a pollinator garden, and the county has been county staff have been active participants in Congaree Biosphere Region planning. The Congaree Biosphere Region is, or the major partners are Congaree National Park, Central Midlands Council of Governments, and CIRCO, Southeast Rural Community Outreach, but it also has some other enthusiastic participants. And then Southeast Sewer and Water Expansion, of course, helps provide some of the infrastructure for these tourism projects to succeed. And Quentin has prepared capital improvement project requests that would help fund the program. Next slide. Okay, this is the second to last slide. We are specifically asking Council to consider the following steps. We would like the Development and Services Committee to forward the plan to the County Council for acceptance as a completed plan. And then County Council could accept the plan as a completed plan and forward it to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission could then adopt the plan in its entirety as an appendix to the comprehensive plan. And then the County Council, we proposed, they could amend the comprehensive plan to add the Lower Richland Tourism Plan. Then it's an official county plan with the council's permission. And once that's done, we could leverage other county divisions to start putting the plan in place through a series of projects and programs. Okay, depending on the size and scope of each project, and I hope these are answering some of the questions that council had asked earlier, but additional approvals from council and other agencies could be necessary. And in fact, I would say for almost all the major projects, there is going to be some county council approval needed. It could include annual budget allocations, acceptance of grants that staff applies for, property acquisition, and construction and professional services contracts. And next slide. Okay, and then typical approvals would include any land purchases or agreements, then any projects that are $100,000 or over. And as noted, that would account for most projects listed for implementation in the Lower Richland Tourism Plan. And that's the last slide. There are questions?
Thank you so much for going through those. I would like to acknowledge Councilwoman English, who has joined us. And have we had any? Is anyone else on virtually? Want to open it up for any questions, discussion points? Ms. Livingston?
Out of the land we're talking about using, how much of the land that we will use for this particular initiative that you think the county already owns in terms of easements or whatever?
Oh, I would say the county already owns most of it. I mean, we own we own the Mill Creek property. There's a portion of it that's part of a mitigation bank and was actually bought with a penny. But the portion we're talking about developing for tourism infrastructure was bought by the conservation. It's being purchased by the Conservation Commission. On Cabin Branch, we actually the vision for that includes acquisition of additional property.
I think that's important, is having a lot of land already assembled. If we were to purchase additional land toward this, will we be able to use some of that land for mitigation credits for other things later?
That's Quentin has brought this up, and actually it's one of the reasons we haven't immediately put conservation easements on these properties is we're just holding out the possibility of being of using some of that land for a mitigation bank. So that's very much in our minds.
I'll happen now. Thanks very much. And thank you for the great initiative.
Okay, sure.
Ms. Newton or Ms. English?
Were you reading my?
Yes, I'm getting good at it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I think that this was very helpful. And so as part of this workshop, I think I mentioned that I reached out to my colleagues, some of whom weren't able to be here today, to ask about some of the questions that they have that I would like to make sure that we covered. And you covered many of them. One question that I would like for you to address a little more in depth, if you could, is the fact that this is a very large and ambitious plan. It's multi-year. It includes many big projects. And so the request, as I understand it, is that council accept the plan and that we send it to the Planning Commission so that it can be incorporated in potentially different forms by the Planning Commission and in our comprehensive plan. My question to you is, as you look at the breadth and depth of the plan, how do you envision looking at phasing what happens next? So are there immediate priorities that you've already identified? Is it that once the plan is accepted that you'll then say, we think this is the critical path? How would you approach something that is this large?
Yeah, well, of course, we do have the template provided by Esker and Robinson about how things might be phased, but we fully anticipate receiving council's guidance on projects of most interest to them. I think it's clear that improving the infrastructure at Mill Creek, at first we just pictured that being the roads, and that was our focal point, but it became the bridges after the bridge failed in that large flood in February 2020. But I think the reason we're so interested in Mill Creek is because it could have a lot of impact quickly. You could have your bank fishermen fishing at Goose Pond. You could have roads out to the river. You could have access via those trails. There's a very strong interest in showing that these plans are returning something to Lower Richland residents too. So that's why the small business incubator and small business development would be considered a high priority too. And, yeah.
Thank you. And one more question, if I'm another question that my colleagues asked that it would be great if you could comment on is, who do you see as driving this project? Do you see it as, once the plan is accepted, that it's really embraced as the charge of the Conservation Commission to lead moving forward? Do you see it as council directing staff specifically? How do you see that, the ownership of these different initiatives moving forward?
Okay, that's interesting because we had talked about that very thing just as I was comparing notes with Eric and Quentin earlier in the day. And there are certain parts of the project that we think we could manage and manage well. But if you look at the small business development piece, that's not in our wheelhouse at all. And when we were listing partners for that, it was people from business programs at Clemson and Midlands Tech and the like who would be spearheading that. And we'd probably rely on departments or divisions more focused on economic development within the county as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I had a few questions. Let's see. I guess the implementation process, the ultimate goal is to forward to council and then go to the planning commission. And I'm not sure if this may be a ACA Jensen question. Have we evaluated at all? Does anything in this plan conflict with our current comprehensive plan? And then also, what is our I guess, age on our comprehensive plan? I feel like we are kind of at the ending point of the 20-year life of a plan, but could you comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Mackey. Good questions, and I have Mr. Brian Crooks and Mr. Price with me today too, if we get into any details. But yes, we're at about year 5 of our current comprehensive plan. And so that would be a minor revision, basically a look back and touch things up. You know, at year 10, we'd be talking a more in-depth review. But as far as I am aware at this point, there's nothing in the Lower Richland Tourism Plan that conflicts with our current comprehensive plan. In fact, I think there's some complementary items in there already since staff was aware of this while that was being prepared.
Thank you. And then my second question, when looking at your slides, and I just want to make sure it was just an error, but when it says year 1 is fiscal year. Yes, page. I'm on page 28. So year 1 starts at fiscal year 21-22, and then if you go to page, so you see year 2, then year 3. If you go to page 29, when you get to year 4, we go to fiscal year 2021. And was that a typo, or am I not looking at it correctly?
Gosh, I didn't even notice that. And I probably wouldn't, yeah, it doesn't show up on my slides, but yeah, that would be a mistake.
Okay.
But the benchmark year is correct because we began work on the bridge replacement and bridge design last year. You know, so.
Year 4 would be 2024, or year 4 would be fiscal year 25?
Fiscal year 24-25 to be consistent.
Fiscal year 5 would be fiscal year 25-26.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Newton?
Thank you. Two questions, and the first question is for staff, and the answer to this question might be in some of our Renaissance Committee documentation, but my recollection is that back in 2019, council approved some funding for a historic trail that was specifically separated from the project once known as Renaissance and approved by council. And so my question for staff that can happen at another time is, can we confirm if that in fact happened the way that I recall? And if so, what, if any, crossover, correlation, or support that might provide? It looks like ACA Jensen is standing, so he might have an answer now.
The answer is I have no clue.
Okay,
And
well,
we will have
that's
to
an
get back
answer.
to you later because I was not with the county at that time. So, but we will get you that information.
When we do reference a heritage tourism marketing plan on the slide you're looking at now, that is using those historic trail hospitality tax funds.
I do believe that there was a breakout. I'll have to confirm the amount just to make sure I have the right specific item. But I believe that amount was about 250. So, yeah, but we'll check in.
Yeah.
Yes, and it might be that we did approve it and that there's no crossover with this project, but just because there are references to historic trails, if that's something that's already approved, that would be beneficial. I wanted to ask about that.
Right.
And then
I'll note that that amount should be $373,000.
I'll let them confirm when they do their research. And then this question may be for staff, but this was a big question that many of my colleagues asked, which is the commitments of expenditure of funds. And so presuming that this is forwarded to council and council approves this plan, or it's not really approval, the correct language that I was told is accept. So if we accept this plan and we incorporate it into our comprehensive plan, for example, what I've been told is that it's a conceptual agreement, but it's not an automatic commitment to expend all these funds or to expend all these funds on this schedule. And I would just like for someone to address that because it's a question that I received from many, many colleagues. And if we forward this to council without addressing that financial piece, I don't know that it will move forward.
Yeah, I think if that's a staff question, I think really, Ms. Newton, the question becomes, as the Conservation Commission is presenting this, is the assumption would be that funding would primarily come from the county. So if you approve this plan, if you accept the plan as it is, I think the Conservation Commission will likely be thinking that you are also accepting that you will be paying these costs in general. I'm not necessarily about, and using this time frame in general as well. So I think to your point, that was something that I was interested in, is to understand, what are the commitment dollars to this project? And if the understanding is that as we go through these years, that the county would be looking to set aside funding in some mechanism to meet these targeted dollar amounts.
Right. Well, the way that you just worded it is not the way that my previous conversations had gone, which is one of the reasons that I want to talk about this. And also because, the plan is several years old, sometimes priorities change, sometimes market dynamics change. And I'm just using this as a hypothetical example. It could be that, at one particular time, the best and highest use was a farm to table restaurant, but now in this economy, the best and highest use is actually a farmer's market, or vice versa. And so this is something that I would like to address, because at no part in my previous conversations was the acceptance of the plan synonymous with a commitment to expend all these dollars as is, but rather it was a conceptual agreement that could be used for the Conservation Commission and others to secure funding for projects to come to us. But this is going to be a huge point for colleagues who are going to be watching this. So I see movement in the back over there. I don't know if there's someone that's going to come and address that.
But I think Ms. Greer, I'll turn it over to you. But I think it certainly would be ideal to hear what the Conservation Commission in their presentation of this kind of what their thought of what this would mean for acceptance.
Yeah, from our perspective, we'll plan for a projects that we think are within our capabilities. A lot of it will come from our budget. The bridge redesign we spent, the bridge so far, we spent $300,000 of our own funds without a single request to council. We'll try to leverage it from the funds we have by writing grants. Quentin just prepared a major grant for land acquisition, and then we would like to leverage other county resources if we could. That's why we wanted to adopt it as part of the comprehensive plan. And if it does come up, I think we mentioned in the presentation that we might occasion, or that we may upon occasion make a request under the budget process to county for specific projects. So, and of course, it's always up to your discretion as to whether you provide funding for those projects or not. I don't see it as a commitment.
Sure, and I guess I want to be clear because I was asked very many times, but also because it's one thing to say, we agree with this conceptually. We're going to work with it as we have funds, and we're going to allocate things on a project by project basis as it comes up. And it's another thing to say that if we add this to the comprehensive plan, that we're committing to spend $10 million or however much, because these are old numbers, and we all know our friend inflation. So that's just something that I think needs to be expressly made clear. And I'm not sure what the council vehicle is for making that clear, but I know that it's going to be important for my colleagues.
Can I ask one follow-up question, Mr. Grego, to a response you gave? When you talked about the bridge replacement, you stated that the Conservation Commission has used $300,000 of their own money. Do you mean, is that the money that council delegated, or is that additional money that you've raised?
Most of that, or it would have been part of our $500,000, mostly under our professional services contract line.
Okay, thank you.
Spread over a couple of years, I believe. Yeah.
Ms. Newton, do you have anything else before Okay. My other question was about I can't find the person, the company that you had to do the study for you. You have the schedule laid out with, each year. Did they provide any type of projected revenue that said, if we can get through at least year 2, we project to see an increased amount of tourism or an increase in this that you can automatically see for the community before we even get to year 5? Is there any type of data from that where we can see maybe the impact that it would create?
I think we've only seen the general, or the closest we've been able to get to that is the economic impact studies for Congaree National Park, which suggest how much money and how many jobs 160,000 visitors, now 215,000 visitors a year would support. The staff went into a little bit more depth on that with their FAQ, with the FAQs they provided, because there had been questions about that. And they talked about there being other attractions besides the park that are already attracting people to the area. But no, we didn't project impact for the project separately.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and if I could return to a point Ms. Newton had made, and it was well taken about the plan. She'd asked about the farm to table restaurant. And I do want to point out that that we do picture this evolving, and just because a restaurant has been placed on Cabin Branch, that doesn't mean that there will be a farm to table restaurant, or if there is, the Cabin Branch will be where it'll be located. And so these projects will definitely evolve as we work on a master plan and seek funding for them.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yes, sir, you recognize.
I did go back and I looked in the budget book that's online, and I believe that the item was referred to as the historical corridor. That that amount was listed In 21 and 22, I think it rolled over. I think you voted to roll it over, move it over. It's 372,715. That's listed under historical corridor. So I hope that answers your question.
And so, yes, it was approved or
It
separate.
was approved under hospitality tax under that specific nomenclature. But I don't think there was anything else associated with the details of it. It's just listed as historical corridor.
Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Ms. English?
I just want to share with you all, I had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Epps and Mr. Grego yesterday at the Palmetto Trail because I was blocked in. So we had quite a bit of discussion. So it was really good. But I just wanted to point out with the sewer and the water, with the land code that's coming through, these things are providing the needed buffers that are going to be needed for this area. And, you know, I always say this is my home and it's very beautiful, but this helps support the smart development and growth in Lower Richland and keeping those areas that are, if you hadn't been out there, that are really gorgeous, and just seeing the trails and how they just open up into the waterways. And they've really done a great job with people cutting these trails and keeping them up. And I'm extremely proud to be able to see that. And thank you to the Conservation Commission for your work that's being done, things that we don't even know about, but they're doing it. And I was very proud of that. So thank you for yesterday. And Shakis, any questions that I had, they answered yesterday while we were trying. So thank you, Mr. Grego.
Thank you.
And I guess my last thing would really be more potentially for the body, which is just that, well, this has to go back to the Development and Services Committee, so I guess we'll do it there. But just that, I don't know if we would need to do some sort of addendum or something else, just addressing that the plans could change and addressing what the financial ask is that's part of that. Just because I know I'm harping on it, it's only because I've heard it 10, 12, 13 times from people. So that might just be something we need to address separately.
Yes, and I guess I would say I would be under the assumption that even if we approve this and moved it forward, that the council has the ability to do certain parts of the plan that we want to do. We don't have to do everything. Is that okay?
I just think that some people might want that said more explicitly, is all.
Once we put it in the Development and Services Committee, some of those can be worked out before forwarded to council.
Mr. Grego, did you have anything else you wanted to share this evening?
No, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Staff? All right, colleagues?
I just want to thank Conservation Committee. Right, and get some things.
D is always good.
Yes, if I can just echo that, thank you, because this has been a labor of love for y'all for a really long time. And you kept the fires burning, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're at item number 4 on the agenda, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
All right, Madam Clerk?
Livingston,
Yes.
Mackey,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
Yes.
Motion approved.